It is May 8th, 2025, and we're talking about evil today on Ghost Hunter Advice.
Advice from the pros. Stories from the haunted. You're listening to the Ghost Hunter Advice Podcast.
And welcome back to Ghost Hunter Advice. I'm your host, Tanner, and I'm joined today by my special ghost host. My
I
special
like that. I
co-host.
like that.
Yeah, right? My special co-host, Matt Barron, the paranormal consultant. How's it going, man?
What's up, brother? How's it going, everybody?
We have some weather coming through today, so I want to go ahead and let you guys know, just in case this stream goes down, we have tornado-esque weather in the area, so if something happens, that's where we've gone. I think you're having some issues up there too.
I'm having lots of issues here today. It's been a heck of a day, heck of a week, but you know what? We're here. It's all in fun.
Awesome.
We'll enjoy it.
Well, all right. So we are out on the Ghost Hunter Advice Facebook page, the Ghost Hunter Advice YouTube channel, and I think we're out on Parapost and your channel as well. Correct?
Yep. I have you on Paranormal Consultant Facebook, my personal Facebook, my YouTube, and I'm posting to Parapost right as we speak.
Sweet. So, all right. If you're listening to the podcast, follow us on YouTube or Facebook. That way, you're able to get on here live, ask questions as you need to. And get real-time feedback or come up and talk to us if you got something going on. Now, today we're going to be talking about evil. Is it an external force? Is it demons? Is it something that is part of this struggle between good and evil, or is it just something that exists and is more of a construct, an internal construct that we use to view things that happen around us, things that happen to us? This is one of those things where I think Matt and I have different points of view on it. So we're going to go back and forth, and we're not arguing. This is a discourse. I think we're on the same side on most of it. But also, is it important to make the distinction? I mean, if everybody is somebody's monster. I'm pretty sure pigs and chickens don't see us as some sort of benevolent creature when we're eating them. Same thing about a rabbit and a jackal, or any sort of animal, and a coyote or a wolf. They're going to view that predator as being evil. Is that the situation we're in? So
I like that analogy. That just that makes me rethink going to KFC now. I start apologizing to my food.
we are the darkness. So we've had cases over the years, and I've gone back and forth on my stance on what I think is happening when we're looking into supernatural events, even on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
But I mean, what do you think? Is it important to even make the distinction between something being evil and something just being and happening to be a predator?
Well, I think if you spend any time in the paranormal field, you know that there's a huge difference between that big D word that you know who likes to use and malicious. It's all intent. Now, I think the word evil gets thrown around more times than what it should. Case in point, I love using this as an analogy and as an example. And that's Penhurst. A lot of the patients there were nonverbal. So what they would do is they would do physical types of touch, punching, scratching, biting, stuff like that as their way of communication. That's not necessarily evil in the paranormal. If they still after death, if they still can't speak, that's the only way they know how to communicate. So it's a matter of perspective. Now there are times to where yes, it is malicious. where you are getting attacked, you are being subservient, I guess would be a good way of putting it, to the spirits, or spirits try to make you subservient to them. They try to dominate. Um, but I think it needs to be you need to do a little more research before you just say something's just straight up evil.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people fall flat on this, that they're not, when you go in, something is scary. You know, you could have a glass or something fly across the room, shatter,
Yeah.
and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm under attack," when really it's just an explosion with something either trying to make contact with you, or something that's not even a consciousness. It's just a pop of some sort of pent up, maybe psychic energy or something, depending on the spot. And that's what I mean when I say from haunting to haunting and location to location, because it really does depend on what you're looking at the time. Because I don't know. How do you feel about this? I think there's a lot going on out there. It's not necessarily everything is a spirit of the dead, everything is a demon, or everything is pent up psychic, um, latent psychic ability.
Well, I've said this before. I have over 400 client investigations under my belt in the 20 years I've been doing this. And when I say 97, if not more percent of my clients, when they contact me, their first words out of their mouth, I have a demon. No, you don't. And I always ask them, why do you say this? Why do, and I don't sit there and just flat out say, no, you don't. I say, why do you say this? And they say the exact same thing. You know, things are moving, doors are slamming, cabinets are opening, this is going on, that's going on. I hear footsteps. Okay, that's not necessarily a sign of a demonic, you know. And the way I've experienced it is these spirits, especially in client homes, they can't communicate. They don't know how to communicate. They're trying to communicate. They want to get their message across. They just can't do it. They're just frustrated that these families just can't. They don't understand how to properly communicate or to talk with them. So what they're going to start doing is they're going to start acting out just like a child would. I mean, you and I both have kids.
Mhm.
If you don't pay attention to a kid, what are they going to do? They're going to act out. They're going to throw stuff. They're going to throw temper tantrums. They're going to get frustrated. Spirits are the same way. And I feel for them. I would be the same way, especially if I don't know what's going on. Like, if some of these spirits, they don't realize that they have passed, you know, and all of a sudden a family moves to your home. I'd be upset. I'd want to try to everything I could to communicate with them, or even a family member or a loved one. I'm trying to say, you know, hey, you know, this is going on, and I'm fine. You know, don't worry about me. But that person isn't paying attention to me. I'm gonna get upset. I'm gonna get frustrated, and I'm gonna start acting out.
Yeah, and that's one of those, like, 9 out of 10 times, there's nothing paranormal going on in the case at all.
Mm,
There's a natural explanation for it. It's, I won't say it's simple or easy, but we find it through either the interviewing process, the longer intake, or doing
mm,
an investigation. But out of that 1 out of 9, out of those cases where something is happening that's paranormal, again, 9 out of 10 of those are not gonna be anything that is necessarily malevolent or wants to cause harm.
yeah,
It's just it's new and it's scary,
yeah.
especially when kids are involved and there's an imaginary
Mm.
friend and the kids are sitting in the room playing and things are, shadows are moving. When anything that involves children tends to be way scarier because they're so vulnerable.
Well,
But
and
in those oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry, brother. No, I was just saying, and from a paranormal standpoint, from an investigator standpoint, when you find out there's kids in a home, that takes your level to a whole new perspective. Like, you're top priority. You're almost emergency sense in a way. You want to get in there as fast as you can because of the kids. But you're right. An imaginary friend can just be just that, just an imaginary friend. Kid just got a heck of an imagination.
Mhm,
But in that off chance, and I think that's where us as paranormal investigators, we get scared, you know, because we hear these kids having these experiences and having these imaginary friends, and you know, Timmy is actually somebody a lot more malicious. But no, I do agree. That's where us as investigators need to debunk properly, and whether it's intake through the interview process or whether it's through the investigation itself, you know, start with the basics, because you know, a thump could just be airing a plumbing pipe. We've talked
mhm.
about that before. EMF poisoning, house settling, creepy neighbor next door. I don't know.
No, man, you would be surprised.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah. But even then, the ones that are supernatural or paranormal, where there is a ghost, or we'll say a ghost, there's paranormal activity in the house, whether it's latent psychic ability and maybe a child going through something and just an explosion of emotions, or maybe one of those properties that seems to magnify latent abilities, or even just bring out and seem to manifest the emotions of the people in the home, the spirit of a deceased person, or something that maybe was inhuman but is benign. 9 out of 10 cases are going to be something like that when it is or a time loop. 9 out of 10 cases are going to be something like that when it is paranormal.
Mhm.
But there are those one in. I was going to say 1 in a million, but really I've had maybe 2 or 3 in the 20 plus years that I've been doing this, where I could say, hey, this is dangerous. This is something that seems to be feeding off of or ramping up negative emotions around the person. It seems very oppressive and very powerful.
Mm.
What? Well, let's start by defining it. What criteria do you use before you say something is I'll say a negative inhuman spirit or a malevolent entity?
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, because you're going to different sections here.
Yeah.
Don't throw me a curveball. Uh, so for me, I try to go worst case scenario, but that's the military in me.
Mhm.
I'll go for the big D. We'll go for the D word. And I check those off. I make sure none of that's happening, because if something like that's happening, then it's a safety concern, obviously. Um, Poltergeist like activity, I'll say, for those playing the home game who don't know the lingo. Malevolent spirits. I look at what is actually going on. First of all, I do just like a regular investigation. I'll debunk first. Is there signs of any type of abuse in the family? And if anybody is watching and you have like any PTSD or something like that, forewarning that it does get kind of graphic, but it has to. It has to be, just because of the nature of what we do. Um, is there any type of alcohol abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental disorders in the family? Um, anything along those lines to create some kind of negative chaos, as I like to call it. Um, it doesn't have to be to a huge extreme. Even verbal abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, anything along those lines that can create a negative entity. And what I mean by that is a negative space. If you think of it this way, if you've ever walked into a room after a couple has had an argument, or a family's had an argument, and the air just doesn't feel right, something just feels off, that's what I'm talking about. That is something that will stay there for a while, and it's almost permanent. And sometimes it's just a matter of separating the family and just talking to them and say, look, I am no way, shape, or form a counselor, but you guys should get some help. You guys need to go to family counseling. Um, and that's something a lot of people don't realize, is in this field, you can really change people's lives. And I'm not just saying us as investigators, the families. You can turn families around. I mean, I've helped families from divorce, and I didn't pull out one piece of equipment. It's just a matter of maybe that's what they need. They need an outlet. They need a source. But I will say, luckily, knock on wood, I've never had to call the cops for anything. Um, but I think it's a lot of things. Like there's somebody really close to me, I'll just put it that way, to where they live in a negative environment, or they did, I should say. And the first thing I told them, get out of that environment. If you feel like you're going to have an argument, if you feel like you're going to fight, if you're going to scream and yell, get out of it. Get out of that area. We'll go for a walk, go for a drive, get out, get off that property, get away from that individual. And you'd be amazed how nice and how more relaxed the home will be. Um, but to go with your question, it happens more times than what you think. You definitely want to look at those first, and then start looking at the paranormal side of it. Is it a poltergeist? Is it something malicious intent? Because don't get me wrong, folks, there are spirits out there that will try to put you down mentally and physically. They will attack you. It does happen. I've been attacked. I've been bitten, scratched, pushed. I've had my name yelled in my face, which that was cool, by the way. I just laughed at the spirit on that one. Probably shouldn't have. But they do attack. and you gotta look at what I'm trying to make this as nice as possible. I really am, brother. This is your show. You gotta see what are the triggers. You gotta see, just like with antiques, we look for trigger objects. What are the triggers of this? There has to be something stemming to feed this negative energy.
Yeah, it's hard to put into words. Secularly, we don't have the vernacular to discuss this really because it's not something that's looked at as, it's not something we're looking at as an external force. Even looking at it as something that's internal that we're projecting out and then getting it back. It's not something that's talked about a whole lot that I've heard in the field, but normally on this show, we're very tactile. This is how you investigate. This is the equipment that you use. This is how we go about doing the, putting the bones of a case together. This is a little bit harder to grab hold of because it is at its root a concept.
Yeah.
So personally, when I'm doing cases, before I'll say something is like a malevolent entity, or I try not to get religious with it. I'm not a religious person. But I mean, that is the word that we use again, just because that's the word that's out there, a demon.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot more going on than that. But when I go into a case, first we have to establish that there is something supernatural happening, whether that is latent psychic ability or an external force. Once we get past that, we have to look at what's happening in the situation in the home. Are people being physically touched? Are people being physically attached or attacked? What's the energy level of the people in the home? Do they feel like they're being oppressed? Do they feel like they're just being beaten down? Are they tired without any sort of explanation as to why they're so tired? Is sleep interrupted? Now that we have all of these biometric devices that we can wear, we can actually monitor people's sleep and see how many times during the night are they being woken up? Are they being disturbed? Are they getting up and moving around and sleepwalking and not even knowing it?
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at all of this along with the physical activity that we've witnessed in the home, things moving around by themselves, scratches appearing, disembodied voices, and the things that, the classic stuff that you think of when you think of haunting. And then we've got to look at the attitude and the tone of it. And then we have to gauge it. There was one case that I worked several years ago that it was a negative entity, not a demon. It was a dude who was an absolute prick when he was alive, who died in the house and was very possessive of the property and was incredibly possessive and continued to try to drive the family out. Not a demon, just a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
And then we have situations where, we have a ton of mineral deposits and mineral deposits around Chattanooga and around this area. There are certain elements that seem to reflect energy, certain things that seem to, if you're into stone tape theory, that can even store and record energy and events that happen and then play them back in areas. So there are times that we go into cases where it is incredibly oppressive. The attitude, the energy in the house, you can feel it when you walk in. You're just walking into a darker space. It's odd. It's off. This is established that we've got a paranormal entity at work or some sort of paranormal activity. And we start going through and we start testing and we start trying different things with whenever there's anything moving to test to make sure it's not a human agent poltergeist. You start running experiments with different people there at the property who are residents of the house. If we notice that there's a pattern when one individual is gone, there's a really, really good chance that activity is somehow linked to that person, whether they're projecting it themselves or they have an attachment. So then we zero in on that. Is this some sort of external attachment, or is this their emotion and what they're putting out into the world? While we're doing this, we're putting more positivity into their lives. We're getting them hooked up with counselors. We're getting them hooked up with gyms, finding hobbies, or helping them reconnect with hobbies and things to bring more joy into their life. In the situations where it's reflection, you get back what you put out.
Yep.
And as we start to fill their life with more positivity, they start emitting positive vibes, and that's what gets reflected back, and the entire attitude, the entire ambiance of the property changes, and the activity changes or stops altogether. But there are, and I can count on one hand, I can count three fingers exactly, times that we've gone through that process, and there has just been something there that is dark, that seems to almost feed on negative emotions, and just seems to enjoy chaos.
Yeah.
And those entities are what I really want to focus on today. The malevolent spirits, the demons, the things that are far more powerful when you run across them than anything really should be. There was one case that comes to mind, and it was several years ago. My son was an infant. I was called to consult on it. When I was talking to the individual, and this was not one that I went in person. We had several conversations, did several interviews, working forward, walking backwards through the case. And I noticed that when she would talk and her mouth was open, as she was talking, and there would be another voice coming behind that. And it was disturbing on the surface. And we did video calls, we did phone calls, had other investigators out there on the ground visit and speak to this individual. But every time they were speaking, this other voice was coming out, and it was overwhelming. It was almost like these weird tentacles were reaching through the phone, and I just felt something with me every time that I got involved with this case, and every time that I was doing work on this case. Even when it got to where even when I wasn't doing work with that individual, I would start feeling something when I started working on this, when I was going through and I was looking for a minister, I was looking for an exorcist to put with the team out there to actually help this person, because it got to the point where I thought a deliverance or an exorcism is warranted. I don't want to go into too much detail on it, but that case, I had this overwhelming feeling that if I continued and I went out there in person, that I would die. I started fearing for my son because of the reach of this thing, and weird stuff would start going wrong. And we'll talk about the Warrens a little bit later, but there are things that were brought up in their books and in some of their writings. I know some of them, they had ghostwriters, some of them they hired other authors to step in, but there were things that were happening that were to the level of that type of intervention with this particular entity. And I finally passed it off to a priest for review and exorcism. But with that, and that was probably the strongest. There's been two others, but that was the most extreme because of the distance involved. This was someone who was on the other side of the country, and I felt the reach of that thing. So when it comes to these entities, what I really wonder is this something that is evil, and this is the embodiment of darkness and of hate and malice, or is it a non-corporeal predator that we perceive as evil, and we see it through that lens simply because it's a predator and we're the prey?
I like that. It's not showing up for some reason. So if you're watching, I know there's more people watching than what I think we're seeing. Because I see Joanne Stewart is saying hi to us. Hey, Joanne. If you guys are watching and we're not responding, just click on the video. So it goes to Ghost Hunter Advice. That's where I shared the link off of. Don't comment on my stuff. Just click the link or click the video to go to it so we can see your guys' comments. I just want to say that real quick. And I agree with you. And honestly, brother, I don't know why, but 3 comes to mind as well. I've said this numerous times. And I just want to say this. I've already stated that I have over 400 investigations under my belt. 3 of them, oddly enough, are ones that I would classify as demonic. I'll actually say it. So they're few and far between. And I don't want to say I'm lucky, because it's not lucky that I ran into that. It's just I had bad luck running into 3 of them that I would classify. One 100%. The other two maybe 50 and 30%. And either way, it was enough for me to say, I'm backing out of this one. That was a safety. But I just want to, before we go any further, I think what we should do is let people know that there is a huge difference between malicious spirits and poltergeist activity. It's two completely separate things, folks. Malicious spirits will try to be demonic. They try to be bigger than what they are. They're bullies. We'll just play that. And like Tanner was saying earlier, there was some guy that he was dealing with that was, a prick. He was a prick in life. He's a prick in death. I've dealt with that. Sometimes that's what happens. The poltergeist, that's something a little bit different. That is a non-human. It doesn't really have an identity. It's just a blob. It's a slime, I guess you could really call it. There's really no entity to it. It's just feeding off of that negative energy, and that's what it likes. It likes feeding off of that. And then there's actually the demonics. They're something completely different, and I'm sure you and I could dive into demonology and be here for a couple hours, but we're not going to do that. But either way, if you run into something like that, you have to be very, very careful. Very, very careful. And you have to, like Tanner said, you have to find out where the fuel is. You can't put out a fire without knowing what the fuel is. And these types of negative energies, 100% are the same way. They're tricky. They're very, very tricky. But you have to think of safety for the family involved. You have to think of it for your safety, for your team safety, just safety all around. It's huge. This is one of those subjects where how can I say this? I have a lot to say, but I can't say it. It's tricky.
Yeah, no, we don't know. We don't know what it is. So it's not just not having the words for it. We don't know what it is. We have disagreements with other people who obviously there's very strong feelings about this in the field. But backing up to what you said about poltergeist and being this blob. So in the cases that I've worked where we're projecting positive or negative emotions outward, in those cases where we have had poltergeist-like activity that was negative, when those people had more positive feelings and were feeding that into the home and maybe feeding that into the entity that was there, that activity changed. And there is a difference between and it's subtle, but there is a difference between poltergeist agent, which is latent psychic activity, ability in a person, usually a female, going through or up to the age of puberty, just really, really strong outbursts of emotion. But then there are also, like you said, these weird blobs that don't really have intelligence or personality themselves, but they seem to latch onto and almost take traits of the people who are there in the house.
Yeah, it's really weird. And if you haven't experienced it, I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
I do not recommend it. But if you have, it is definitely it's different, because you're almost, from the paranormal standpoint, from an investigator standpoint, there's an entity.
Mhm.
But there's not. You're literally talking to no one. And I know it sounds weird, but it's like this. If you are sitting there and you see a figure standing in front of you, let's just say a black mass or a shadow figure for those playing the home game, you see the silhouette, you see the thing, you see the person, you're talking to it, but there's nobody really there. There's no spirit there. There's no individuality there. It is just there. Actually, I got a good example.
It's like a blank slate. It's like there's something there. It's like a robot that doesn't have programming in it yet, and it just kind of takes from.
So this is going to be a fun thing, but it's 100% true. It's like if I talk to this guy, if I'm trying to exorcise this guy out of my
Now,
house.
for those of you who are listening on audio for this, he is holding up
Oh,
is that a
sorry.
beanbag or a plushie?
I forgot that you do the audio side. So, audio listeners, I do apologize. If you remember Pac-Man, this is
Oh,
a Pac-Man stuffy plushie doll. It's got all the little Pac-Man ghosts on it. I don't know why I grabbed him first. I have like frogs and stuff all over my desk, but I grabbed him. But it basically, imagine talking to a stuffed animal. It's there, you know it's there, but nothing's going on upstairs. There's no identity. And I know it sounds kind of fun, but it's not because you can't pinpoint this. You don't know how to help because it's being fed from somewhere. It's like having a leak that you can't find, and it's a pain in the ass.
and that's why this is not a one and done type thing. When we're
No.
talking about these cases that have real activity happening that are like what we're talking about, that there are these personalityless blobs for poltergeists or something that is demonic, we're involved in these cases for months. That
Yep.
one, before I found someone that I could refer that to, a priest who would take that on, I was involved in that case for 7 months, and it was a hellacious 7 months consulting at a distance on that case. Um, the cases where I was involved personally, I was physically sick. Again, involved in those cases for months and absolutely physically ill, run down, oppressed is really only word that comes to mind. But what we're talking about here, this is something that I wanted to talk about for a while because it's something that I seem to run across. I don't want to say a lot, but especially since I've started the podcast and there's a much wider pool of people reaching out with activity, this seems to be something that happens. It's pretty common in hauntings where there's activity and there's something there, but it doesn't have a personality itself. Now, I've talked to other investigators, and I'd like to have your input on this. Our drive and our personality, the lens that we're using to view the world,
Mm.
is primarily dominated by our biological components and our drives. We need to eat, we need to sleep, we long for connection. Our emotions are tempered and triggered by chemical reactions and hormones in our brains and in our physical bodies. And these things don't have any of that. That physical drive and the way that we view the world, our drives as far as how we make our decisions through the day, what we define as good, what we define as evil, and how we define ourselves. It's all a product of our biology. There's no biology there. This is just, we'll say, an
Mm.
energy mass. Take the electricity and the energy and separate it from those biological components, which I think I think now most neuroscientists and most people studying consciousness agree that there is some give and take. There's some of it is the electricity, the energy that's in us. And I'm using electricity because I don't have a better word for it. And then the other half is the other 60% or 70%, or however it shakes out, is actually due to our biochemistry. And when you take that away, how much of the personality and how much of the person is left in that free floating ball of energy? Are they latching onto us and using those components and those emotions that we're pushing out to shape themselves and to basically reflect it back?
Well, a couple of things on that one. So, as far as a humanoid or a spirit that has an identity, I think we already hit that nail on the head. It all depends on how you
Mhm.
were in life. If that's how, if there is an entity actually there, an actual humanoid spirit. If you're a prick in life, you're probably gonna be a prick in death. Now, again, just like time, good and evil is irrelevant to me. Like, and if you don't believe me, look at terrorists. They think what they're doing is for the good. We look at it as they're all bad. It's a matter of perspective. It's all a matter of your environment. How were you raised? Some people think the U.S. government is a big evil superpower. There's a lot of Americans who are red, white, and blue through and through. It's a matter of perspective. So as far as the human side of that, that's that's where I stand. That's just me. You either have a really good spirit or you have a spirit that's a pain in the ass, is malicious, tries to torture people, tries to be dominant to the living. At least that's from what I've noticed. When it comes to negative energies and negative poltergeist activity, that type, what you're talking about with just the electricity, what I think it ends up being is there's some kind of trigger in the home. There's something that has happened, whether it's an argument, whether it's some type of abuse, whether it's a tragedy, something is stirring this up and it's filling this home up. And just like anything else, when you fill something to the brink, it will eventually burst. It can't go anywhere. Um, and that's where you start getting these negative entities, these poltergeist activities. It's just so much of it. It's so much of an overflow. And from what I've noticed, either one or two things: either the person themselves is a prick who's fueling this, and that's just how they are, or they get used to that environment. They're not necessarily doing that. It may just be, we'll just say a husband, for example. Husband just has a really crappy job. He gets treated like crap all the time. He comes home and doesn't mean to, but takes it out on his family and then apologizes later. And they don't actually, make up. It's just, look, I'm sorry, I had a rough day. I just want to be left alone. Pretty respectful. I think most of us would agree that was, pretty nice. But that's the mentality, though. He's still ticked. He's still pushing out that negative energy. Once you start doing this over and over and over and over, you're filling up that home. And then it becomes second nature. It becomes habit. And I don't think that they're consciously doing it. It's just a subconscious reaction. And you're just, again, filling up that home to the point to where we end up getting called in. Whatever spirit is there, if there is any type of consciousness there, they want that. They want that more negativity. They want that strength. They want to get that reaction. So they'll do things to make that individual upset. And it just keeps feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding. And it just, and then as far as like the demonics, that's again something completely, they have their own agenda, which again, we could get into if you want later. But as far as the negativity side of it, it's again, it depends. It really depends on the person. It depends on the spirit, and it depends on the situation.
Well, I like what you're saying about the energy down. It's kind of like The Shining. This inhuman
Yeah,
place makes this inhuman place makes human monsters.
hundred percent.
There are places that just seem to be poison. Maybe there was something horrible that happened there, and it seems like tragedy is just attracted to that spot. There's not a lot that can be done there. You're gonna have a bad time if you go. It's a different cultures call it different thing. Bad land, cursed land, a dark place, or somewhere that they don't talk about. I think every town's got something that's like that. That is just it's somewhere that you stay away from, and it affects you. Like it turns you. It basically draws out the worst parts of you because no one's completely good. No one's completely bad.
No.
On the upside, like there are places you can go that are incredibly positive that'll pull out those better pieces of you and those better parts of you. But do you think when we're talking about entities that are dark that prefer
Mhm.
to feed on these things and it is a conscious choice for them, maybe, I don't know, this is all conjecture, we don't really know how this works.
Of
um
course.
do you think that they create those places, or do you think that they're drawn to those places? Because often the two go hand in hand.
Hmm. I think it's situational. I think you can have both. I have ran into a couple of spirits that were just from the home. It's just that's just how they were. They were attached to an individual. They were feeding off of an individual, just like I was stating earlier. They were just picking on them, basically. Um, but then you find some that I would have. I can see not having a reason for them being there. They follow somebody home. Um, whether it's just something like they see some negativity in them, they see something that obviously draws them in, and just like I don't want to turn it like this, but the only way I can think of it is think of it like animals. They want to create the environment that they're most comfortable in. So I can see it both ways. I can see them literally turning the environment negative. Um, I mean, we see this a lot with, like you said, looking at, has there been a change in personality? Has there been a change in habits, hobbies, anything? Have they noticed anything? Because now we're starting to get into parapsychology, and there's the rabbit hole runs deep on this one, and I love this. But again, I can I just I can see it both
Yeah,
ways, and
and
it's a
it's
tough
not,
one.
there's not a one size fits all answer to this, because again, every situation we go
Mhm.
into is different. There's probably 1,000 different things going on out there that's all being lumped into, ghosts and hauntings. But yeah, I look at it the same way, as far as it's an animal. So I'm a nuts and bolts
Yeah.
guy. I'm an investigator. When I go in, I'm looking to gather evidence, get the best idea of what's going on, and get a solution together for the people that I'm helping. Sometimes it's a lot of trial and error. We're doing journals. Like, I'm going to go in, we're going to do the intake like we normally do. We're going to start doing the vigils. We're going to go through the evidence to see what physical evidence we can go in and try to find if there's a reasonable explanation for it. We're going to start setting them up with gyms and counselors, and getting a good support group around them, and see if that takes care of it. And if not, then it's honestly, it goes to religious intervention, and I don't know why that works. I don't know if it's the giant push of energy, if it strengthens the family enough to push it out, or if those two things are actually linked. But I have found it doesn't matter what the religion is, as long as the person there has some sort of belief in it.
I think it's all, and not to go classic here, I think it's all the warm and fuzzies. It gives the family the warm and fuzzies, and it gives them the safer environment. And on top of that, it gives them a sense of ownership, and that's huge. When we run into these, I find that a lot. The family just lost their ownership of the home, and what I mean by that, if you don't understand, it's they're basically visiting their own home. They're living with somebody else, and that's not the case. The spirits, good or bad, have to understand that they're not here anymore. They lost their ownership. Sorry, not sorry. And the family needs to have that. Um, and that's why for me, that's what actually led me to become ordained and branch out, and not just Christianity, but all religions. Because as a Christian, I'm not gonna go into a Buddhist home and start, saying the Lord's Prayer. Not gonna work. It's going to make the family uncomfortable. It's going to make a weird environment. And like we were saying earlier, you want them to be happy. You want the clients in the home to be in a positive light. And if you start mixing up religions, you're gonna stir some pots. We'll just say it that way. Um, but I think religion, as good as it is, it's it's kind of like that life raft. It's a life raft being lost out, and say you're that's the only thing you hold on to at that point, and that's the first thing you hold on to. We go back to our bare basics, and our natural instinct is religion, a higher power, putting it in. I don't want to say giving up authority, since you are giving it up. You are trusting that a higher power will take care of you, or will take care of your situation. In every investigation I've done, I've offered a blessing. And I'm not saying I do like professional, I hit my mic, a professional blessing, like a church quality, but just a simple prayer. Just a simple prayer. Sometimes I have lavender or sage, and my camera, just give me a sec. Let me see here.
It had
Yeah, technology's great today.
tearing up on you.
Yeah, right. Windshield wiper. But even just walking around with like black sage. If you don't know what black sage is, it's very common in a lot of cleansings and blessings. It's very popular to use. White sage is really good too. Lavender. I'll even walk around and do that, and I'll go through and I'll personally pray for each family member in their rooms, in their whole throughout the entire house, even the bathrooms. I do this. Heavenly poops. I don't know, whatever you want to say.
Yes.
But That's a different type of exorcism. But I'll go through and I'll do that, and I'll do that just me. No cameras, no audio, no family members, no investigators, just me. And I make it very personal, and I want the spirits or the energy in there to understand that at that point, it's me. I am taking control of it. I am turning the authority over to the family, and I want to start fresh, and that's what I do, and I start fresh, and I have the family come in, and I tell them, you tell the spirits, you tell anything that's here, this is your home. End of story. And they do, and you would be amazed how quickly the whole atmosphere changes. They literally they sometimes they don't even have to. They'll come in and they'll say, "Holy crap! This is just the whole house just feels so different." Sometimes it's just the sage. Sometimes it's lavender. Sometimes it's the prayer. I don't know what exactly it does, but it's working, and that's what it all comes down to. The results. The results
Mhm.
is the family's happy. They're taken care of. They have what they need, and they move on with their lives. It doesn't have to be, oh, no, this was, Beelzebub. This was a demon. This was so and so. This was Aunt Susie. No, they don't need who it exactly was. They don't need that. They just need that authority. They need that closure. They need that ownership.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. There's no atheists in foxholes.
Mm.
Um, I am not a religious person. I'm not gonna go around and like call things demons, and generally, it's not something that crossed my mind until I don't have another word to call it. That one case that I was talking about earlier, it's the scariest that I've ever been in my life. The other two cases, they were very intense on property.
Yeah.
They were very intense during the investigation. I was present for the not truly an exorcism, but a deliverance, non-Catholic
Okay.
exorcism for those, and was sick as a dog afterwards. But that one, um, I don't have a point of reference for the weight that I felt when I was interacting with that entity. Um, that I couldn't do anything. I felt
Useless.
absolutely useless, powerless. I'm like, this, it can do whatever it wants to me, my family, whoever it wants. And apparently, where with the reach like that I've never seen before, um, to anywhere in the world, it can touch and do whatever it wants. I have no way of doing anything against that. So like there was nothing but trying to look to or find a higher power to deal with that, which is why it passed it to a legit priest.
Yeah.
Um, it I don't have words for it. I don't have the point of reference for it. Again, I'm not a religious person, and I try to keep that out and be very nuts and bolts and practical when we're talking about this stuff. But with something like that, it's just not possible.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, there's 100% was the demonic. I'll just say it. Two, probably, but it was enough to it had me back out. And if anybody follows me, I don't shy away from anything. I'm one of those. Something just went off. Something, there's a bang down the hallway. Somebody screams. I'm there. I'm running down that hallway. I'm not running away from it. I'm running towards it. There was 3 times where I backed out. I just couldn't. And I know that feeling you're talking about, brother. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. The amount of dread, the amount of uselessness, depression I pray for in that moment. I would pray for a basic depression. That it was, you lost all sense of control of yourself, your mental state. It's terrible.
Mhm.
And even a malicious spirit, that feeling, it was didn't come close to those three. But even in that sense, again, you have to look at safety. Can you really continue what you're doing, and can you do it safely, and not just for you or for your investigators, but the family as well? Are they going to get attacked?
Mhm.
um I It's not something I don't think anybody should ever wish or look for. But we wouldn't be doing our jobs as paranormal investigators if we didn't acknowledge the fact that it happens. Sometimes
It's
it
rare.
happens.
It's rare.
It is rare. It is a rarity to run into something like that. Like I said, think of it this way, folks: 400, only 3,
Mhm.
only 3 that I've backed away from, and I didn't want to, but I needed to. And like you get these shows and these movies, they seem like demonics or malicious or all these negative spirits happen all the time. No, they really don't. But when they do, you'll know it.
Mhm.
You will 100% know it.
I've run into mountain lions on
Same.
surveillance cases when I've been out. I've run into coyotes and wolves, and I
Ooh,
was in the
puppy.
woods a lot for a long time. But and they're predators. They're these things that they can use their claws and their teeth to rip us apart.
Mhm.
But I had a fighting chance there, and I knew how to stand my ground. With that particular entity, I felt like then I keep using this analogy, but I just felt like a prey animal.
Mhm.
Um, I'm gonna get eaten.
It's funny you said a mountain lion because there's actually a cemetery not too far that my team and my old team, we dubbed Big Kitty Cemetery.
Hmm.
There is a reason. We were out investigating the one night, and the overburden that a lot of cemeteries have.
Mhm.
They just have all these mounds of dirt and just whatever. Well, me and one of the other founder from another team, we were walking around, and I was teaching him how I train my team, and from a distance, I let teams do their thing, let them train, but I was telling him what I do, and we just get to this overburden area, and we just happen to just turn the flashlight over, and there's a mountain lion like 15 feet from us, and I
Mhm.
just went, "That's a big kitty." No, I was like, "No." And we started backing up. We had the flashlight on, and it jumped away from us, luckily. And right after that, we got on the radios, and we're like, "Everyone, get to the meeting place. We got to meet up. We got to meet up. There's an emergency. Meet up. Meet up. Everyone together." And so after that, it was called Big Kitty Cemetery. But
Mhm.
I, you're 100% right. I've ran into that bears here in Pennsylvania. We have a lot of
Mhm.
black bears. I ran into them.
It's a different
Nothing.
type of fear, man. It's nothing like running across one of those entities.
No, no. The only thing I can really say is the helplessness,
Yeah.
the complete helplessness that you feel when you're in that area. Now, with malicious or poltergeist, well, poltergeists are a little different, but
Yeah.
with malicious, with negative energies like that, negative entities, that's where you have to stand your ground in a sense. You
Mhm.
you have to keep yourself in check. If you do run into something like that, I'm not saying, act like you know who and take your shirt off and call it a demon and square up. Don't do that unless you have a hit TV show. I'm flipping him off under my desk, so
Yeah.
it's your show. Um,
Um, I I try not to call people out. I think everybody in the field knows who that's talking about. But, like,
Speaking of
there are
differences,
gimmicks and things, and that's one of the reasons that I try to keep this show level and level-headed is because
yeah,
I wanna stay away from gimmicks and really talk about the nuts and bolts, but it's hard to when you're talking about this,
yeah.
because it is so extreme, and, like, the malevolent, entities, even, they might be demonic, but they were, I don't know, lesser to some extent. Those, it's intense and it's scary, but when you run across something so weird,
Well, lesser demons. One of them I did run into. That was the one that I 100% knew. That's exactly what it was. Um, that's where I stopped everything. I got the church involved immediately. Like I was on the phone out at base camp trying to get a hold of a priest.
mhm,
Um, the low level demonics or brutes, when they get discovered, they fight. They fight back. They don't like to typically. They like to bide their time and they infest. That's what they're like cockroaches. They'll sit there and make a nest and they'll infest and infect that area. But when they're found out, they'll come out fighting.
mhm,
I mean, that's worse than what we're talking about. That is a whole new level of worthlessness and uselessness. But when you run into a poltergeist or a negative entity, the worst thing you can do is be subservient to that. Don't give in. And I'm not saying, again, not be aggressive towards it. You got to meet it with positivity. Start playing music, start, having fun, playing games, do something to drown out that negativity. But you're 100% right. That feeling, I wouldn't wish on anybody.
Mhm. And for the most part, like when Hollywood and television, reality TV shows, they have everything seem like it heads toward a conflict, and there's this final conflict between good and evil, or your side and their side, and it's all over. And it doesn't work like that on any level.
Mm,
Most of the time, when we solve, say, solve this problem, or we leave it better than we found it, it's been months of work bringing positivity into that space. If it is something that I'm okay, I'll use the D word. If it is something that's demonic, it's not a one and done with an exorcism. There are
no.
exorcisms that stretch on for years with multiple rites performed. Counseling is a huge part of that. You can't go through it without having at least a church counselor or a secular counselor who's helping you regulate emotionally until things finally clear.
Yeah.
But it's not one big final conflict, and for the most part, you're not gonna yell at anything. There's not some big fight that's going down at the end of any investigations. It's just trying to make the place better and make it a place that, if it is an entity not suitable for that entity and it moves on
Yeah.
because it's starved out because there's no negative energy for it to feed on, or if it is one of the blobbies. I like using that word. I'm going to start using that again, using that now. Blobbies. Um, it starts reflecting back positive energy because that's what it's consuming, and it just you want to you want to help the family or the person or the business that's experiencing this get to a better place.
100%. And uh, you're completely right. It's not a quick fix. None of this is. None of this is a quick fix. But again, when you're putting your focus should be putting, like you said, Tanner, putting positivity into that area and into that environment, and it put away all your differences. That's something that I think a lot of teams forget. Like they'll use religion. Religion's just one of those ones that everyone uses. They think, pull out a Bible and everything's all happy go lucky. No. There's some atheists out there. You got to think of other people. Just the fact that we're human beings should be enough to break that. Have fun with it, relax. And the best thing to do if you're an investigator is calm down your client. Experiment with them. I've had a lot of flack with this, but with all my investigations, minus a couple, my clients have been at base for multiple reasons. One, I want them to see exactly what's going on. It's their home. They have a right to know. Two, they could be used as a trigger object. I hate saying it like that, but like we said, sometimes it revolves around a single person. But I always ask for permission. Do you mind if this person comes in? Do you mind if that person comes in? Do you mind if we do this, do that? But at the very end of it, I want them to see that there's not the big bad wolf waiting for them. We went in, we're strangers, we've done some things, we directly went towards that problem, and we came out on hopefully unscathed. Now it's their turn. We show them how to do it. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Christian, it doesn't matter whether you're a Buddhist, atheist, whatever you want to call yourself, it doesn't matter. Just the fact that you are human beings living in the same space, that you are bringing positivity will be enough.
And that we keep talking about positive vibes and stuff, and I know it sounds woo woo, but at the end of the day, that's really what seems to do it. Um,
Well, again,
yeah.
it's a deep subject. This
Mhm.
is this is a great subject. I mean, you and I, like I said, you and I could probably go just on the negative side of it. We can probably go a couple episodes with this,
Mhm.
and then we get into the demonology side of it. We can do a couple more episodes. But folks, he's absolutely right. It may sound all warm and fuzzy and stuff like that, but I'm telling you right now, and I know Tanner will attest to this too. When you're in that situation and you walk into that home and that amount of dread, if you weren't if you're listening, you didn't see, but when we started talking about this, I could feel myself. I saw myself on camera just start to cringe because I
Mhm.
knew what was going to be coming up. I had to mentally prepare myself for this because it's almost like PTSD. It's that bad. That feeling you do not forget. You do not forget the feeling of dread.
And it's not something that we talk about a lot. One, because it's unpleasant, but also because this entire episode, we sound out of our minds. But
Well,
yeah,
I mean, anybody who's watched my show, you know I'm out of my mind, but
but yeah, it's one of those things. So just hard and fast. We've been talking through a lot of our viewpoints and experiences with negative and human spirits, demons, if you want to call them that. Um, when it comes to this, evil is an external force. I think evil is just a concept that we came up with, that we gauge. Like you said earlier, there's no real good or evil. There's just what is in our interest and what is not in our interest. What is in the interest of the whole, versus what's in the interest of the individual or the predator.
well,
Um,
it's outlook.
yeah.
It's the way you look at it. And there's so many different circumstances, and there's certain environments that people grow up in. I mean, a great example of that would be pit bulls.
Mhm.
A lot of people say pit bulls are evil, nasty dogs. No, it's a matter of training. How do you train them? And honestly, I think Chihuahuas are the meanest little shits out there.
They have they bite more than any other dog. They are the most aggressive breed. But like when it comes to entities, a negative, predatory, inhuman spirit or
Yeah,
non-corporeal entity that we call demons, or the religion has given the title of demon to. I do believe those exist. I do think
yeah.
that they are I don't want to call it a natural predator, but probably the closest thing to a natural predator that we have. I think it's rare. I think most of what we end up walking into is poltergeist activity that's thought to be demonic, but really is just one of the blobbies that we talked about. But yeah, I believe that those things are out there. I have to. I've seen it.
Well, and that's the other thing too. Like, even if you're an atheist, even if you don't believe, you can't tell me that mainstream media plus the church plus pretty much every culture in history has some sort of non-human type entity that is basically a demonic. It follows that basic definition of a demonic. You cannot tell me that that's just coincidence. I'm sorry. I may believe in the paranormal, but I do not believe in coincidence. Not by any stretch of the imagination. And from what I've seen before and after the paranormal, of course there's obviously demonics. There is something, and whether they are actual demons like the title, who knows? That's just something that we gave them. There is something that is quote unquote good, and there is something that is quote unquote bad. And what I mean by that is there is something that is good for us and there's something that's bad for us. That's just basic humans. We all know what I'm talking about. You know, you get that instinct. You know, oh, this is going to be a shit storm, or this is good, this is positive. You know that. I think it would be very egotistical to ignore it, and to not acknowledge it. I don't want to say you're part of the problem, but I think you're being blinded because we all have our good and bad sides. I mean, you guys see the weird consultant, you see the one that likes to have fun, but I hate to say it, but there's some parts of me that I hate. There are
Mhm.
some negative sides of me, and I'm sure, brother, you feel the same way about yourself. We're all not perfect. There's
Yeah, I mean, we all do things, and we all have those drives to do things too that are maybe either some sort of weird self sabotage, or maybe just to get what you want. We all have that little voice. Again, back to The Shining.
Yeah,
That place just draws it out and makes it rampant. But I think most of society has tried to explain that little voice and that little, um, the devil sitting on the shoulder as an actual demon. But yeah, I do think there is an actual physical thing out there. It's not driving people to do things unless it's feeding on the energy there, but there is something that likes to see destruction and
there there has to be a balance. There has to be a yin and a yang. There has to be. If there's light, there's darkness. If there's good, there's evil. Whether what side of that coin you're on, it's a matter of interpretation. But I'm when you have an addiction, there's a reason why they say you're fighting your own demons. And I know because green screen. Yeah, right. I smoke. I'm going to admit it. I smoke. I smoke cigarettes. That is my own personal demon I'm dealing with. I think it's just the same with everybody. Road rage, something as simple as road rage, or that one coworker that just drives you up the wall. We all have our own personal demons that we deal with. They don't have to be to the extent of like The Shining or The Exorcist, or which, by the way, The Pope's Exorcist was a really good movie. I just saw that not too long
I
ago.
enjoyed that.
That was a really good. I want to say that's probably, I don't want to say the absolute closest, but that was pretty close to what we were talking about as far as an exorcism, how long it takes. I think they did a really good job with that. Nothing to take away from The Conjuring, by the way. I like The Conjuring.
They're good movies. I'm a big fan of the fictional Warrens.
Yeah.
They are superheroes. I am on the fence. I go back and forth from being on the fence to just being absolutely turned off by the real Warrens. But yeah, the fictional Warrens are freaking superheroes.
To me, the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine, whether you like what they did or whether you didn't like what they did, they, to me, were pioneers in the paranormal field. They brought us out of the woodworks. They brought our culture and our field out to mainstream. I think they were big players in what we do. And to me, I have to give them that respect. Obviously there's something that has happened, whether you want to believe in like the Annabelle doll or not, that's up to you. Obviously something happened, whether it's to that extent or not. Something happened. There is no reason why, even when they clean that they clean that case that the Annabelle doll sits in, that they have EMTs, firefighters, police, priests. They've got everybody there just to even clean that. There's a reason for that. Emergency response people, and I'm sure brother, they just don't come out just because, they're opening a doll's case. Sorry, there has to be something warranted to that.
I don't know. Like, that's the thing. Like with those cases, the Annabelle doll, I think the story on that they've given changed, or that they gave changed a couple times. Now, if you are selling books and you are making a living in the paranormal, there are certain things that you end up doing to,
spice it up.
Spice. That's a good way to put it. Spice it up. There's some exaggeration and some embellishment. This is an opinion, okay? I'm not saying that this is fact. Don't at me, bro. But not you.
I was gonna say, not me, brother.
No Warren Foundation. Yeah, we'll see. Like that's the thing, though. That's the heart of what we're talking about today. It's such a personal thing. Like I feel like an absolute just asshole to say that I don't believe these things that they're saying happened to them, when I've had things that honestly are just as crazy that I've experienced in my own cases that nobody's going to believe, that I don't talk about. That I'm a fiction. I write fiction. I'm a horror writer. I put some of that stuff in my fiction books because it's just so out there. I don't feel right judging somebody else and saying that they're lying about it.
Well, I think with you, because it's kind of like me too. I think this is where you and I kind of coincide with this. I respect the Warrens. Don't get me wrong, Ed and Lorraine, God bless them. But I wasn't there. Yeah. I don't have the facts. I haven't experienced it for myself. I haven't seen the Annabelle doll or like the Robert dolls or any of these trigger objects. I haven't experienced it. So I can't say yes or no whether or not it's legit or not. Am I going to go to Annabelle and say, you're not real? I'm not going to poke the bear.
Yeah.
But I would go there, and I would, I wouldn't say investigate, but you kind of feel the environment. What am I feeling at that point in time? Am I feeling what we were talking about earlier, that dread, that helplessness? Am I feeling that? Am I picking up on that? Same thing with any of the haunted objects. Can I pick up on that? Is there something I can tangibly latch onto? But I think that's where you and I are like on that one. But
Mhm.
no, like I said, I have to give them the respect
Yeah.
that they do. They did a lot for our field, and I
Mhm.
give them that respect, 100%. Other people with that name, we'll just leave it at that.
I haven't met the
Uh,
others. I haven't met the Warrens. That's something that's an interview that I wish I could have done.
oh,
But
well, and here's the thing too. Like from what I understand, Lorraine especially was very down to earth. Now she
mhm,
was the one who had all these abilities. Ed was more of the grounded individual. He was the grounding point. He was more just like us. I need the facts. I need to see it. It needs to be in front of me. She was more the metaphysical side of it. They had a great balance.
mhm,
But she was so, I know this is kind of cliche, she was so down to earth. She was very approachable to what I understand. Ed, a little more reserved, but he was still approachable. Like if you watch some of these interviews they've done, even in colleges, like just regular colleges, not like mainstream media, very down to earth, very relaxed, very, upfront with everything, and they were not afraid to tell it as it is. So,
mhm.
like I said, to me, I give them all the credit. I give them 100% credit for that, and they have my respect. But again, just like you, I I got to see it to believe it.
Yeah, and that's the reason that I do this podcast, Ghost Hunter Advice, to give new ghost hunters and people who are like, you know what, I don't know if I don't know if I believe these people's stories. Learn about it, have your own experiences, hook up with a team, do it safely, avoid making the mistakes that I made. But it is a personal journey, and it's all about personal experience. Like I question everybody.
Hmm.
There are people that who I know. I know you personally. I know several people out in the field personally. We've developed relationships, and when they say something happened, I believe something happened because I know these people, but I believe something happened because I've had my own experiences.
Well,
Um,
and here's the thing: you said something that's really interesting. These new investigators, they come on, and whether they believe it or not, here's a little secret, folks. Whether you're a seasoned investigator or brand new, I don't believe it either. I'm a skeptic, but I'm also a believer. You have to have that balance.
mhm,
You have to be able to believe in it, but at the same side, you can't. You cannot believe everything you hear. When you talk to a client, and nothing against if you're having a paranormal experience, I'm not trying to put you down by any stretch of the imagination. Reach out if you have to, but from a paranormal investigator standpoint, I'm going to tell you right now, I will believe 50% of it. I will listen to 100%. I will be very serious about 100% of it, but I'll believe 50% of it. Why? Because I'm pretty sure most of it can be debunked.
mhm. Well, it's like when people send me videos, EVPs, and photos. I love getting those, by the way. Ghosthunteradvice@gmail.com. If you have something you want me to take a look at, I'd love to. But my answer usually pisses people off because I've been doing this for so long. And part of I went through a lot of stuff with Troy Taylor back when he was doing ghost hunting classes, and just on my own doing podcasting and audio engineering here, and as a surveillance investigator using cameras to do so many different types of cameras to do surveillance work.
Mm-hmm.
I can pick out lens flares, and I can
Yep.
generally explain what's going on in a photograph or a recording after analysis. But when I can't explain it, the answer that I give people generally pisses them off. Where I'm like, this is either real or a good practical effect for a fake.
Yep. You know,
Um,
and I'm the same way. And I know this is going to definitely stir the pot because it's a huge one.
mhm,
Orbs. I am You can send me the greatest orb picture, and I will tell you right now, it's dust or it's a bug.
mhm,
I I've only seen in my 20 years there was only one video that I would consider an actual orb. By definition, mind you, I'm not saying it's a spirit. I'm saying it's an orb. It's a ball of energy that has its own flight path, and that was actually sent by Mr. Fedora, Scott Morton. And oddly enough, it was the first night him and I met face to face. We did a little how to, kind of like what you're doing here with Ghost Hunter Advice. We did a quick how to Ghost Hunter class. We set up a camera. We all walked away, and there was something that flew into frame, came up a little bit, hung out for a second, and then just shot off into nothingness. Most people would say bug. I thought bug until I zoomed in and I noticed how close it was to the camera, and I noticed there was no wings. You couldn't see the wings, even with the flare of the IR. It was still perfect circle, perfect everything. It had its own flight path. The other thing was there was no dust in there, absolutely no dust where we were investigating. No dust, no bugs, no anything else. There was no type of quote unquote orb activity. It was just that. So to me, that's not normal. That's an orb. I will 100% say that. Everything else, no,
Mhm.
especially outside.
Well, you've got the weird stuff too, where like somebody might see a person walking through a room, take a picture, and you've got an orb. If that's collaborating or corroborating something that someone saw, I think that's a stronger piece of evidence. Yeah, it could be a spirit orb. The photo, it doesn't change the fact that the photo itself doesn't stand. And you have a personal story, and that's why it's so personal, because we've had weird stuff like that happen.
Yep.
Nobody's going to believe it. I don't expect people to believe it because I'm not fully on board with it myself when I
No,
hear about it.
100%. If like, and I've already said this, if there, by the way, folks, this is not just for orbs. We're talking about all evidence. If it goes, if you get a video of an orb coming, say, at the camera, so it's coming just like this, right at the camera, and it's perfect circular, emitting its own light, it has its own flight path, and you get footsteps with it, or you get a voice with it that's coming closer that can go with what you're seeing, 100%. I'll say right then and there, that is a spirit. 100%. I believe that because obviously it's not a person because you can't see anything. You can't see that it's a person, and obviously the before and after, there's no flashlight. You know what I mean? If you can try to debunk it and you're still left with nothing, no answer, no explanation, 100%, yeah, that's paranormal.
Mhm.
But I see a bunch of little dots flying all over the freaking screen, and I see a ceiling fan on, or I see, somebody that hasn't dusted for, this century, or it's outside. No, 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 no. But I think
Awesome.
we got a little off topic, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the way it goes. So
Yeah.
we covered demonic, and you can't really talk about that subject without at least touching on the Warrens,
Yeah.
and then from that we just get on to onto our thoughts on paranormal evidence. But yeah,
It goes hand
guys,
in hand, though.
with
It
this,
can.
when it comes to evil, whether or not it exists or not, the thing that we're calling an evil entity or a demonic, yeah, I think those entities are there, whether it's
Yes.
some sort of war and the religious aspects of that and the dogmatic aspects of that, if that's in play, I don't know. I try not to look at that. Again, I am a nuts and bolts guy. What works in this situation to get the best outcome for the people who are involved? um I don't know if the conversation is warranted. I don't know if it's just semantics, if we're looking at something that just is and just is a predator of us, or if something is evil and part of some bigger picture. The outcome's the same. How it's dealt with at the end of the day is the same. But it's a fun mental exercise and a great conversation to have. My office light is on a timer, so for those
I
of
was
you
just
who
gonna
are
say.
watching the video, I have not been able to get the timer set on these light bulbs for like every 20, it's not even 25, it's like 23 point something minutes it,
I was
it
gonna
goes
say,
off.
you just said about that, and your lights went off. I was like, hmm.
Mhm. So, I'll actually do this one. Alexa, turn the light on. Gee.
Hey, and for those of you watching, I will. I told Tanner this earlier. At least his Alexa listens to him. Mine doesn't. I hate that little brat. Oh, I yell at
Man.
her all the time.
But guys, hey, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you're listening to this, I want to hear your thoughts. So get involved. Head over to ghostcentteradvice.com. Leave me a little voicemail. Click that microphone at the bottom of the page, or just go to the contact page and write it out. Send me an email. Ghostcentteradvice.com. Or excuse me, ghostcentteradvice@gmail.com, and let me know what your thoughts are on demonic hauntings, demonic activity, possessions, exorcisms. I'd love to hear what you guys think and feature those. And as always, send me your questions. This show is your questions are the lifeblood of the content that we're creating here. Make sure you check out Matt, the paranormal consultant. Where's the best place for them to hook up with you?
Honestly, I'll keep it simple. You can either find me on YouTube under Paranormal Consultant, or you can find me on Facebook, Paranormal Consultant. I also have a TikTok under the same handle as well.
Awesome. Well, guys, make sure you connect with us on YouTube so that you can see the video of this and be with us live when we're doing these live channels. Stay tuned. I do have some information coming soon on the Patreon. We'll be doing some live Q&As on the on Patreon, as well as having different forms and tools and things for you guys to use for when you're building your teams, looking for teams, or conducting your investigations with all of the forms and paperwork you've heard me talk about on the show, which is absolutely the sexiest part of ghost hunting.
Oh yeah, 100%. Insert sarcasm.
Yes, that's what everybody wants. It's the paperwork. Screw the stories.
As long as there's pictures.
All right, guys. I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much. See you, Matt.
Much love, guys.